okay, so we've got an idea. It's going to be a great business, but you're not going to do this alone. And sometimes you'll have a group of founders that make a company, so you're kind of stuck with the people who you're going to be around you. But you are going to need some early team members to get this company going. And it might be one person, it might be two people. You're going to need somebody somewhere who's going to be able to do the product development for you, the R&D. My experience over 30 years of doing this is picking the right kind of R&D engineers. A lot of the failings that I've seen is when you have straight out of university grads who try and be a CTO, a Chief Technical Officer, and they don't have the experience and the scar tissue and the startup mentality to be able to actually be a very good CTO, especially in the early stage. The mentality around a really good R&D engineer who knows startup is often quite different from R&D engineers that sit inside big companies. So again, just because they've got a pedigree of being in a big Medtronic or in a big Stryker, that doesn't automatically qualify them to be a great startup engineer. You need people like that around you. So the engineer needs to be experienced in startups if you really want to be efficient from the beginning, because they'll know how to get prototypes done, they'll know prototype houses, they'll know how to get small labs set up, they'll know how to use capital really efficiently to get you advances in the product really quickly. They'll know how to do the right things in the right order without wasting time and money on experimentation to get you to, let's say, your first prototype that you want to be able to show to people. So picking those kinds of people early on will make massive gains. They may not be the people who take the product to the end of the game, but you need the right person at the right time, and it'll be the same for all of this. There's also certain people you need to avoid. Quite often you'll be asked, oh, look, I've got a friend's son who's a graduate who's just graduated and they'd be great to come and work in your startup. Try and avoid that if you can. Novices in the early days are not as useful as you might think they are. Yes, they're fresh, warm bodies and they can do things, but quite often they're inefficient. So you really want to make sure you avoid the willful amateur novices, because they'll actually get in the way and you'll spend more time teaching them than you do getting things out of them. Not at the time, in the early days, in the seed round, when you're getting going, you need that experience that's in there. And here's a really important piece of advice. If there's people who don't 100% believe in this idea, if they say, well, it could work, it could be good, the doubters need to get off the bus right now. You cannot afford to have any passengers with you who are, it may work, it may not work. Unless these people are 100% committed, willing to put some money in even, willing to give their time, really put their whole heart and soul into this, you don't want those people in the early part of a startup. If you're going to, and we'll talk a lot about regulatory and quality, but if you're going to pick a consultant, or if you're going to pick somebody who's going to start in the company, if you're that confident to already build a team with QA and RA, again, pick people that have done this in startups. I'm going to use quality and regulatory as an example again here. Just because somebody's done quality or regulatory in one of the big companies like Fresenius, that doesn't mean that they've ever actually genuinely set up a quality and regulatory system. What they've done is they've inherited often an old system and they've made modifications, but they don't know how to set up from day one a quality system, a quality management system, a document management system. They don't really understand the early parts of the regulatory pathway so that you make sure that your documentation or your progression of your product is set up from day one, so that when you get to the point of regulatory and you're going to do the regulatory submissions, you don't then have to do all the work backwards. So when you're hiring either people in or consultants in, one of the questions that I would be asking them is, how much startup experience have you got? If it's a regulatory person, I'd say, okay, have you ever set up a system? If it's a quality person, have you ever set up the QMS? Have you ever actually done one? What document system did you choose and why? These are the sort of questions that if you can get those early on and they can answer them credibly, it's great. What you don't want a team of 5 people sat around the table where for all of you, it's your first startup and you've never done this and it's the blind leading the blind. What you want is you want some knowledge around that table of the how you do it. And the final piece is when you take those people, they need to be able to also be multitaskers. Yes, R&D engineers are going to do the R&D, but you know what? They should also know a little bit about the quality system and the input into the quality system. These need to be people that have got experiences that are broad and deep, but with a lot of scar tissue as well. And again, don't discard some of the people, because some people will come in and learn. They'll have been in a big company, they'll have got the right mentality, they'll have actually got some know-how. But you can't have everyone around the table, this being their first rodeo, because that is how you get into a disaster pretty quick and bad decisions get made early. And what happens is you actually end up with the systems being set up in a way that is not going to be useful in the future, and you're going to have to bring in a whole new team to unwind and unpick everything and redo everything again from scratch. So when you pick that early team, pick well and make sure that around your table, for however many people you need, you've got people with startup experience. Okay, let's continue.